What's up, everybody? This is Matty Symz, and I'm shocked. Really am. I'm surprised this happened. Looks like Philadelphia and Indianapolis got a deal done with a trade regarding Carson Wentz, so let's get into it. So in this trade, Indianapolis received Carson Wentz. In exchange, Philadelphia received a 2021 third-round pick as well as a 2022 conditional second-round pick. The conditions on this pick is that it will become a first-round pick if either Carson Wentz plays 75% of all plays next season, or if Wentz plays at least 70% of all plays next season and the Colts make the playoffs. I think this was a great trade for both sides. Indianapolis finally gets the veteran quarterback they were looking forward to, who has enough of a future where they have plenty of years to go with this current core of already a playoff contending team. But they also have someone who has a higher ceiling than, say, like a Jacoby Brissett, who they had 2 years ago, or even a Phillip Rivers, who recently retired this year, in terms of long-term outlook. And then Philly, they get even more draft compensation. It's probably not what Philly was ideally looking forward, is they were probably looking for something similar to what the Lions got for Matthew Stafford. But I think Philly can definitely do something with that conditional pick if the Colts make the playoffs, which I think is pretty likely given how they were already a good team with an advanced age quarterback in Rivers. And I think someone like Carson could definitely take them even a little farther into the playoffs. So I think Philly will get a first-round pick out of that conditional pick. And in turn, I think Philly can use this for something like a wide receiver. I know they've had a lot of misses, and they keep having a weird sort of tactic with, I think, stretching where they should draft receivers. Like last year, they picked Jalen Reagor over the likes of Justin Jefferson, which I even found that to be a bit head-scratching because I thought Justin Jefferson was clearly the number 4 receiver on that board. But apparently they like Jalen Reagor out of TCU for some reason. If there's anything that's also interesting out of this, I think it shows that Philly is now really committed to Jalen Hurts as their mobile QB of the future. He was able to do a lot more outside the pocket than Carson Wentz could ever do. And when he also played, he also looked pretty decent. I mean, he clearly had a much higher upside on that Eagles offense, although I do think that was a product of him being mobile enough to where he could move around outside the pocket, which was something Carson Wentz could never really do. And what I think Wentz brings to Indy, he brings a new stable quarterback leadership position that really hasn't been felt since Andrew Luck left. Sure, they had Jacoby Brissett, and while I think a lot of people liked him, I think it was very clear that he wasn't going to be the long-term option, given that he's primarily been a backup QB first in New England and now with Indianapolis, and probably after this with another team, because I don't expect Indianapolis to re-sign him. And Phillip Rivers, we knew, was going to be a short-term fix for Indianapolis. I mean, he only had like a 2-year contract, and he didn't even stay the second year. But overall, I think this is a great trade. I think Indy's going to have a playoff contending team moving forward. There's some people who think that's a Super Bowl team right there. I think that defense is very good. I think of that offensive line is very good. They have some promising young receivers. Jonathan Taylor looks like he's going to be an absolute beast for them. I don't know if I'm ready to say they're a Super Bowl team. I do think they're going to be very good for the next few years, and they probably have a good shot of winning the AFC South, maybe competing with the Titans for that number 1 spot in that division. So I think Wentz brings a lot more stability. There's been questions about his leadership and his personality leaving Philly, but I don't blame him for being upset the way he left Philly. I mean, it seemed like his coach didn't want him there. It seemed like his front office really didn't do any favors for him in terms of drafting really badly in terms of the receiver position. His O-line got injured. And while I think part of it was Carson's fault that he didn't perform well, in many aspects I think there was plenty of blame elsewhere that you can't necessarily blame on Wentz. And I think it was really just a lose-lose situation for him in Philadelphia. And I think this will be an interesting future for the Philadelphia Eagles. Jalen Hurts, as I said before, he looks really promising. As someone who goes to the University of Alabama, I regard Jalen Hurts very highly. I think he's a class act, and I think he'll be definitely a great individual to have in Philadelphia's locker room. I mean, even when he left Alabama, a lot of people praised him for how he became a leader at the University of Oklahoma. And I think he'll be a great leader for that team, especially one that's sort of rebuilding after that Super Bowl window they had back in 2017. I think these draft picks will overall allow them to make their decisions on new players into the future. I think one position that really needs to be addressed is receiver. I think another thing that could be considered, especially with some of their aging members of their O-line, is another offensive lineman. Overall, Philly just needs draft picks. They need to start rebuilding again. It's clear that Doug Peterson wasn't the answer, especially with how he handled the last game of the season where he benched Jalen Hurts so that they could get into better draft position, which that rose a lot of questions and concerns and raised a lot of eyebrows in terms of confusion. I know Joe Judge of the New York Giants wasn't particularly happy with that decision, as that cost his team a chance at the playoffs. However, I don't think a 6-10 team should have been in the playoffs, but that's another discussion. Overall, I think this ended up working out really well for both teams. Maybe Philly wasn't happy with what they got. I don't think Indy's giving up too much. Chris Ballard has seemingly made great decisions for Indianapolis ever since he's become their general manager. And I think it allows, once again, Philly to rebuild, Indianapolis to find stability at the one position they've been needing for the last couple of years with an already great roster. So overall, I think it'll be well for both teams. If y'all have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments below. Tell me what you think, and I'd love to hear it. As always, roll Tide and roll out.